Okay, well, look, we might as well make a start then for those that are with us and those that will be seeing this later down the track. So just to introduce myself, my name's Morton Hershterfer. I'm the director of the New South Wales PLT pre-admission program at the College of Law. And with me today, we've got Kelly, who is, she's in the background. She's our engagement and relationship manager. And so she's here to assist me if I need it and to answer questions as they come up in chat if I lose track of that. So she'll just stay in the background, but we'll be jumping in and helping out along the way. And we've also got Ebony, who's a former NDU student who's come along and very generously given her time to talk a little bit about her experience at college, and more importantly, to answer any questions that you might have for her that you wouldn't necessarily ask of me, or that I would be in a position to give you useful answers on. So we generally keep these sessions relatively informal, don't follow a particular script or routine. I had a quick chat with Ebony earlier. She's just sort of on standby. I'll throw it to her without notice at some point when it seems appropriate to hear from her. So Ebony, have you got your camera on? Did you want to, there you are. Do you just want to say a quick hello to everybody?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all again. Yeah. If you have any questions throughout, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, well, just by way of introduction before I throw it to you later, if you wouldn't mind just telling everybody when you finished here, when you finished at uni, when you did your college, and when you were admitted, and what you're doing now, then we can
sure.
jump into the crux of things later.
Okay, no worries. So I graduated university in April this year. Finished my studies in November last year, but had the graduation ceremony this year in April. I then commenced college in February of this year. I did it part-time and only just recently finished, actually. So I'm in the process at the moment of doing my admission application.
Wonderful. All right, thanks for that. All right, so now for to get things moving then, let's have a quick look at the slideshow, and I'll tell you a little bit of an overview of the course. Now, normally, in the old days when we would do these sessions face to face, and I'd have 30 or 40 students in attendance in the moot courtroom at campus, I'd start by asking everybody, look, who's in their final year, penultimate year, earlier on, so I had some sense of where everybody was and how to pitch the talk. Obviously, can't do that now, so I'll just have to give you a pretty good overview, well aware of the fact that there are going to be some final year students and some watching as well as some first and second year students. So I'll do my best to give as general a talk for everybody as possible. And just give you an idea of what PLT is, what college is, features, key features of our course, et cetera. Because in my experience, whether you're a first year student or a final year student, even the most diligent of students who've heard about PLT and have done the research, they still have lots of questions, and it's all theoretical until you've actually get started. In fact, that's one of the things I'll probably ask Ebony about later is, what was it about college that she didn't expect, that she didn't know, that nobody had told her, so that you guys don't come in with any blind spots as well. So to start, we'll start with the basics. Look, you get your law degree, which you're all now finishing up. So that gives you a really critical academic theoretical underpinning for your practice of law. Very important. Obviously, you need to know it, and it'll inform everything you do in practice, but it's not the kind of thing you actually do every day in practice. So what you don't have necessarily is the practical skills. Now, I know Notre Dame is more practical than a lot of unis, so you'll come out with some practical grounding, but you won't spend a lot of time on doing things like drafting letters of advice and drafting statements of claim and interviewing clients necessarily and advising clients, things like that. So that's where we come in. So practical legal training acts as that bridge between the theoretical and the practical. And then once you've done the two of those things, unlike systems overseas, in the States or in the UK now, there's no sort of bar exam or anything like that for admission. All the regulators and admitting authorities, the Supreme Courts across the country, all they need is evidence of a law degree and a PLT completion certificate, and you submit that, and then along with whatever disclosures and the like you need to make, you're just admitted as of right. You don't need to pass any exams. They trust the universities and the PLT providers to make sure you've come out knowing the things that you need to know, both academic and practical. So it's a pretty straightforward process. We understand that that's really what students want and expect from us more than anything, is just to get their ticket, get on to practice. You're ambitious and keen. You've worked a long time and worked really hard to get to this point. You want to get underway as quickly as possible. So our job is to just take you that last step of the journey, and get you admitted. So that you can see on that slide some pictures. We always try where we can, now that we're back to face-to-face admissions, to take as many photos as we can of all of our many students that get admitted across the country, because we know that's what you're after. So here we like to start with that picture of getting admitted at the Supreme Court. So we know that's the ultimate prize, and we never lose sight of that. So how do you get there? That's where we come in. And what is it about our course that we think it's useful for you to know before you start? So you can see on this next slide, there's a bit of information here. The important bit from our perspective in terms of letting you know what, before we dig into the details of our course, is sort of at a higher level. Well, what are your options? What are your choices? And as you can see, here's a quote from a recent graduate of ours that highlights flexibility, options, choices. We know that that's the most important thing for students. So we offer all sorts of different modes. So we have, at the moment, 100% online. Still in the pandemic, we're being allowed to offer that, and we expect now to be able to offer that in the future. I don't think the regulators will now say we have to go back to having some compulsory face-to-face component. So we think it'll the 100% online is with us for good. We also have our traditional course, which has 1 week of face-to-face attendance. At the moment, we've converted that to on a Zoom platform virtually, but we are offering it now back as a face-to-face skills week, and students are coming back slowly, but they're coming back and taking advantage of that. So for the moment, we have both options, and we have a full-time and part-time, day or evening, and multiple start dates. So you can see our full-time course is 15 weeks. Part-time course is the exact same course at half speed. So it's 30 weeks. It's designed for students with work or life commitments. They're essentially equivalent to a full or part-time uni load. So the full-time course is designed for students that have that time to devote to it. They're in a hurry. They want to get admitted as fast as possible. We've got that fast track option. Many of our students take the part-time course because they've got other things going on. So that allows you to get full value of the course over a longer period of time, without adding to stress and burdens of your everyday life as well. As we said, we've got day and evening courses, and more than 50 intakes throughout the year. We've got, during the busy time, starts end of November. That's when still traditionally many students come out and really keen to get going. So our biggest intake of the year is always our first one of our academic year at the end of November. Busy throughout December, January, February. Probably 75 or 80% of our students will start in that time. Then it gets a little slower, and then we have another peak in the middle of the year for students that have finished after semester one or have gotten permission to start their PLT earlier while they're doing semester two. And then it gets a little quiet again, and then it starts all back up again. So during our busy time, we have courses starting every week or two. During our slow time, the longest you'd have to wait is a couple of weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks between courses. So we know how important it is to find what you want, full-time or part-time, face-to-face or virtual, day or evening. We've got 3 different evening courses that run throughout the year. Well, 4 actually at the moment on a continuous loop. So regional and in the city, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So our view is always give our students what they want when they want it, for maximum convenience. All right, so that's sort of the general structure of it all. What is the course actually all about? Well, as this slide demonstrates, look, it's taking everything you've learned at uni and giving you now the practical skills to put that knowledge to use for clients. You're going to be going out there being billed out at $250, $300, $400, $500 an hour to a client. You need to know what you're doing for a client to pay you that kind of money. And those are the skills you haven't got yet. So even though we only have you for a relatively short period of time, we've got a lot to teach you, so you can provide that service and value to your clients. So, and I mentioned a few of these things before. It's about interviewing and drafting. Essentially, it can be boiled down to communicating everything you know about the law in a way that is appropriate for and will be understood by and of value to whoever you're giving it to, whether it's the clients or a court or lawyers on the other side or the community at large. So in a sense, we're really teaching you multiple languages more than anything, how to best express everything you've learned at uni to the right audience. And as the slide says, it's the day-to-day. It's what lawyers actually do at their desk from 9 to 5 or more every day that we focus on. So it's in fact the opposite of what you've learned at uni. It's not a high level theory. It's okay, now it's time now to bring your eyes down to, okay, well, what do I need to do right now in this minute for this client that is important, and those are the skills that we give you. And so the way we do that is by feedback. Our course mirrors practice as best we can in a admittedly artificial environment, and we have you work through the various subjects and work through tasks and activities where you're doing all the things I just mentioned. You're writing submissions, you're drafting affidavits, you're writing advices to clients, you're putting together PowerPoint presentations and all sorts of other ways we now advise our clients. It's not, the days of here's a 30-page letter of advice are long gone. If you're delivering a 30-page letter of advice to a client, you're being a pretty bad lawyer these days. So, we give you all those tools and you work through all those activities. It's all file-based, just like in practice. You'll have a particular matter. Let's say it's civil litigation, or let's say property. You're drafting a contract for sale of land for a client. Everything starts with a file with a letter of instructions from your supervising partner or associate that pretty much just says, this is who we act for, this is the kind of matter it is, this is what we're up to. I'm going on leave for a couple of weeks. While I'm away, can you do the following things? It's all very, very small, bite-sized, task-based things. Draft that affidavit, draft an advice, draft a statement of claim, fill out the beginning of a contract, draft a special condition, draft a will, prepare submissions for the Land and Environment Court, draft a deed of release in an employment matter, whatever it might be. Here's a list of, and then we give you everything you need. There'll be letters of instructions from the client, copies of any pleadings that are on foot, correspondence that have gone back and forth between the parties, a contract if it's relevant, all the stuff you need so that you can do those things. And so that's 95% of your time in the course is spent working your way through the various subjects, through the various tasks and activities. And the critical thing at the core of our course is the feedback you get from your lecturer. Your lecturer is all of our lecturers are practicing lawyers, or they've been in practice until quite recently. So this is, if I had to summarize the college experience in a sentence, this is we play the role of a supervising lawyer who's showing you the ropes, and this is how you do it in real life conversation. Everything you learn at uni, right, this is how you do it. So that's really what it's all about. And so everything you submit, you get feedback on, and it's meaningful feedback. We'll tell you what you did well and why we think it was a really good bit. It might tell you, other bits where you're close but not quite there. We'll say, right, very good first go, but here's how you can make it a bit better. Always remember to do this. Go back and have a look at this practice paper or whatever it was, so you can see what it was that you could do to improve it a little bit better, because we want you to be as close to a fully formed lawyer as you can be when you leave us, so you can hit the ground running. So you won't embarrass yourselves, you won't embarrass us, and your employers will think, right, okay, this is somebody that was paying attention, and they get it. They're still new at it, and they've got a lot of learning to go, and then you get the rest will be filled in when you get into practice. But we expose you to everything that you need to know. We give you enough of a go at everything, so at least you've done it once before you have to get out there and do it in practice. And then you can see the constructive conversations bit is the assessment piece at the end of every subject. We don't assess you like you're used to at uni, because that's not a very good way for you to learn, and it's not a good way at all for us to know what kind of lawyer you're going to be. So we assess you the way you're going to be assessed in practice. In practice, you're going to have weekly file review sessions with your boss, where they're going to sit down and go through all your matters and say, right, tell us about this one. Where are we up to there? And what have we told the client here? And, are we on track? Do we have everything we need by way of evidence and the like for the upcoming matter? Or are we ready to proceed to settlement? Whatever the sort of matter is, that's what you're going to be asked every day in practice. And that's what we do. So we have you do the tasks and the activities, and then we have a conversation with you at the end. It's really more of a sort of a review of the work you've done. Think of it as a sort of a portfolio or overview. It's just a chance for us to talk through the work you've done and give you every opportunity to demonstrate the depth of your knowledge. So we'll just ask you simple questions like, what did you advise the client about that? Why did you tell them that? Why didn't you advise this? Why did you advise that their prospects of success were good or weak? Or why did you advise the client to buy that business through a company structure as opposed to a partnership structure? We just need to see that you turned your mind to the things that were relevant to the work that you were doing for your client, and that you reasoned your way into a course of action, and you can explain it when somebody asks, why did you do this instead of that? So it's very conversational. It's not a cross-examination. We don't grill you or anything like that. And there's 6 points throughout the course as you're being, as you get to the end of each of your subjects, where you'll have that conversation with either your lecturer or an adjunct practitioner that'll come in to assist with the assessments. And if you get something wrong, we'll tell you. We don't want you walking out thinking you know the answer when you don't. Let's say it's a property matter, and the question is, all right, who drafted that document? So you got a 50-50 chance. You flip a coin in your brain really quickly, and you might ask more than say. The vendor and your assessor will say incorrect. It's the purchaser, and here's how you remember it. So it's the purchaser. So you'll never make that mistake again, and you'll know how to remember who drafts what sort of document. So look, we know this kind of assessment is new to most students. And it can be scary for some if you come in thinking, oh my God, 45 minutes, I'm going to be asked a whole bunch of questions. But we've been doing it this way for nearly 10 years now. The universal feedback from students, our lecturers, the profession, the regulators is it's a breath of fresh air. Everybody loves it. A typical comment we get from students is, oh, I can't, I was so nervous going into my very first one, and I can't believe 45 minutes, it went so fast. I didn't want it to end. I was having such a good chat. So look, I realize I've been doing a fair bit of talking, and I can see Ebony nodding along very, very generously. So look, Ebony, I might just throw it to you at this point, mostly just to give everybody a break from me, and just to ask your sort of experience of the sorts of things I've just been talking about up till now, which is the working your way through the stuff and perhaps the end of subject oral reviews and the like, just to just share with everybody your experience. And feel free to disagree with anything I've said. We've not scripted this. We've not talked ahead of time about what Ebony's going to say. And I always tell people, be honest. We're not here to mislead anybody. So, Ebony, I'll just throw it to you at this point for
sure.
your take on what I've covered so far.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Morton. So College of Law is very practical. Notre Dame prepares you very well for College of Law, in that all of the subjects that we do at Notre Dame cross over to the ones that get taught at college, which is excellent. So I use some of my notes from Notre Dame for some of my college subjects, which is really helpful. As Morton said, it's very practical in the sense that you'll be drafting letters, advices, preparing submissions, and the like. That will be on a weekly basis if you do part-time, which is what I opted to do. On a full-time basis, I think from memory, they get quite a few assessments per week. But if you're doing it on a part-time basis, it's sort of one to two per week, which is quite manageable. It's a self-paced course. So if you have other things going on, such as work, outside commitments, you can pace yourself as long as you get everything submitted in on time. That's something that I sort of learned the hard way. But yeah, no, it's very self-paced, very enjoyable. All the lecturers are lovely. Yeah, and did anyone have any questions at this point? No, it's not in the chat.
I had a quick question just in terms of your like drawing parallels to Notre Dame and how practical it was. Do you find that the learning environment is the same in terms of being able to reach out to your lecturers and get feedback on assessments and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. All the lecturers are very approachable. You'll have a set lecturer for the entire course, whether that be full-time or part-time. And then, yeah, they're always very, very approachable. You can send emails whenever you want if you have questions. If they give you feedback on an assignment that you don't necessarily agree with, you can always reach out and ask them why they gave you that feedback. The assessments, sometimes you'll be asked to resubmit assessments. So you're able to pass the oral assessment. That's nothing to be concerned about. That's just so they can understand, they can see that you understand the content well. But as Morton said, for each subject, there's an oral assessment. So all of the assessments that you do prior, you will need to pass in order to be able to sit the oral assessment, which is always at the end of every subject. So it's, and they're not daunting at all. They're very, it's just like a conversational talk. Yeah, they're quite useful. Did anyone else have any other questions at this point?
Yeah, I just had a question about the transition between uni assessments and assessments from PLT. Are they very different from each other? Because I find at uni we often have to talk about like the history of the law, but the same with PLT assessments.
No, very different, very, very different. The assessments in college, as I said earlier, they're quite practical. So there's no history involved from my memory. It's sort of, yeah, as I said, you'll be drafting advices, letters to clients, submissions. So yeah, all very based on the law and what you'll be doing in the profession as a graduate. Yeah, so no history involved, which is sort of a good thing. I think that's all left at uni, which is good.
Yeah, look, when I welcome our new students on the Monday morning of the first day of the course, one of the first things I tell them is, you know, if you ever start a letter of advice with "there once was a snail in a bottle," you are being the world's worst lawyer. The clients pay you $400 an hour because they know you know that, and they don't need to know that. They just want to know, you know, am I going to win or not? Do I have a strong case? How long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? How much money am I going to get? That's so we almost have to retrain uni students to get out of that long sentences, long answers, because you're trying to show everything you know to a uni professor, whereas in practice, you don't want to show. It's not about what you know. It's what the client needs to know. And that needs to be done in a very brief, concise way. So it's a very new set of skills for you. You will never sit an exam or write an essay in practice. In practice, you're going to be writing a 2-paragraph executive summary, followed by 2 or 3 pages of information for the client. But if you won't be referring to legislation or authorities or any of that, because if you do that, well, first of all, they think you're just showing off, or worse yet, you're just trying to justify your high fees. Now, you know, people have enough reason to hate lawyers. We don't need to give them any more. They just want simple answers to what for them are very simple questions in complex matters. So you need to be thorough and accurate and correct, but in a language your client understands. They don't want to read footnotes.
Thank you. That was really helpful. And also, how much time did you allocate to study for each subject?
I think it varies for each student. So I sort of adopted the way I studied at uni, in that I would do all of the readings at the beginning of a subject, and then I'd make notes on them. I don't think some students do that, but I found it quite helpful in completing my assessments for that subject. So yeah, it sort of varies. I can't put a time on it, but I did allocate time each week to sit down and go through materials for college. But yeah, as I said, it's a very self-paced course. And unlike uni, where you have lectures each week, that's not the same for college. So if you choose to do the part-time course, and I'm not sure if it's the same for full-time, but in the first week, there was Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, which you allocate for college, and you sit down with a lecturer and you go through content. And then from then on, it's self-paced. So you do the subject sort of by yourself with your lecturer always available, but there's no sit-down lectures.
Yeah. Look, the conventional wisdom is the full-time course is about 35 hours a week. It's the the equivalent of a full-time uni load. The part-time course is about 17 hours a week. But as Ebony said, look, every student's different. Some students can do it in half that time. Other students will want to take advantage of every bit of resources and time we've got. And if they're coming to it new and they've got the capacity, they'll spend more time than that. But as a guide, that's what the workload is equivalent to. But look, in my experience, most students, we know we're dealing with clever people. You wouldn't have got this far if you weren't. And life has necessitated that you develop really good skills of prioritizing and being economical in the time you expend on things. So we know students can get through in a lot shorter time. We just can't say, oh yeah, it's easy. You're only going to spend a couple hours a day. Some students will find they can get away with that, and that's fine. Where their life requires them to get away with that, and that's fine too. But as Ebony said, it's everything in between those two extremes. So it's very hard to give you a satisfactory answer to that question. I'm sorry.
I might pass it back to you, Morton, if no one has any other questions at this point.
All right. I'm having a look at the chat. Chat seems to be quiet. So a few more slides to quickly look at. So look, just some basic stuff around college, just so you know who we are and what we do. Look, we have an extraordinarily high number of our students report that within the sort of first 6 months out, they've gotten the job they were after within law, or a similar sort of job based on their legal qualifications and admission. So look, the one thing you'll find is we survey the life out of you when you come through here. We ask you questions at the beginning, questions at the end. We're keen to know how you're all going, how we're going, how we can improve. So we do very detailed follow-up surveys with our students, and we get into the government reporting as well. So we can confidently say right down to 92.6% have found a good job in a short period of time. Law grads, our grads in particular, are getting the higher paid jobs. We do compare ourselves. We get stats from the government about the income that's being reported from the graduates from the PLT programs around the world, and we consistently rate at the highest in the PLT space, and across all professions. So, we like to make sure our grads are set up as well as possible for moving into the profession. Look, we work closely with more than 30 of the top law firms, small, medium, and large, across the country. I mentioned that for a couple of reasons, not just to show off or anything, but firstly, it enables us to have our fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the profession. So we work very closely with the regulators, the firms, and business and industry, so that we know what the expectation is, that the skills that our students will have coming out. So we're regularly upgrading our materials or changing our course to focus on the skills you're going to need 5 years from now, not the skills that a lawyer needed 5 years ago. So we work really closely with the practicing profession to make sure that we're preparing our grads for what they expect you'll be able to know and do. The second reason I mentioned is, look, we're obviously doing something right. All these firms across the country could put their grads through any PLT provider. There are about a dozen of us across the country, and most of them choose us and have done so for nearly 20 years. So they're obviously happy with what we're providing. So it just lets you know that you can have confidence in our program. Now you can see, as I said before, there are a dozen or so providers. We've, as you can see there, we've got the lion's share of the market, almost more than we're comfortable having. If the ACCC decided to have a look at us, they might ask us, are we doing something? Do we have some unfair competitive advantage? But look, we're not in it for the money. We're not for profit. We're not just out there chasing students. We're obviously, we keep an eye on our market share, because that's the best indicator that we're doing something right. And if our numbers dip, that lets us know there's a problem. We have to look at something. But the fact that, as said, we've been doing this for nearly 50 years, and we've got the overwhelming majority of the market satisfies us that we're doing what we need to maintain the quality of the program. We're not just resting on our laurels or anything like that. So you're in pretty good hands with us. Now, so getting into some more of the detail then about, and I touched on this before, the sorts of courses and when we run them. So here's just some upcoming courses to give you an idea of the sorts of courses we have and how regularly we offer them. So just coming up, we've got a course starting next week, and that's the last one for this academic year. And then we've got the evening course I mentioned starting on the 7th, and from the 21st of November courses, that's our sort of new academic year. So that's our 2023 courses. And you can see we've got a blended. That means the first week is face-to-face. And so we've got one of those happening here in Sydney, another one happening up in Armidale. And then we've got the following week, we've got a part-time course starting in Sydney and in Parramatta. Then the first week of December, we've got full-time and part-time here in Sydney. So you can see that was that busy period I was telling you about. So just from sort of mid-November to the beginning of December, we got all those courses starting in all those places: full-time, part-time, face-to-face, online, etc. And then you can see we've got some courses in short break. We only close for the week between Christmas and New Year's. So then we've got online courses starting again in January, blended and online and on campus, all sorts of modes. And then we've got down in Wollongong, so we're out in Kensington, Parramatta, Central Coast, Coffs Harbour. We go to where the students are, and so you can see all those courses starting just between November through to April. So the two things you'll never hear from us: you'll never hear the course you want is full. We never cap them. We don't cut off enrollments. You can enroll into any one of our courses right up to the week before the course starts. We will make sure we've got room, lecturers. You'll never be told you can't do the course you want, and you'll never be told that thing students hate to hear, which is the elective you want isn't offered that semester. Our course is offered in its entirety, every single intake, so you don't have to make any decisions around when a subject that you want is offered or anything like that. You just pick the time and the mode, and we'll deliver the course for you. We will never turn you away. We won't put you on a waiting list or anything like that. All right, so look, we've already covered a bit of this. We talked a fair bit earlier about the coursework part of it. So I don't know that we necessarily need to talk much more about that. There are two other parts of the course. There's work experience and continuing professional education. And the three of those together make up the entirety of the course. So what we've been talking about up to now, for the most part, it's been the coursework. That's the bit that's 15 or 30 weeks long. You've actually got 4 years to complete the course, and most students don't take anywhere near that time, but you've got that time if you need it. And there is a work experience component. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But generally speaking, that there is no substitute for actually going out into the legal environment and seeing how lawyers and clients and courts all interact and watch actual lawyering taking place in the wild. So when PLT came in 50 years ago, it replaced the old article system, but everyone accepted, and there were good reasons for that, but everyone accepted, oh, but we don't want to do away with that entirely. We still want students, need students, and students need, and the profession needs students to go out and get some placements and actually spend time in practice, watching what happens. So there is that work experience component. And then every year when you renew your practicing certificate, you need to do 10 years of continuing legal education. So the admitting authorities have asked us to get you into the habit of that. So we've got a 10-hour CPD type component to our course, which now focuses on all the other stuff we think you need to know that there isn't time to put in a regular course, and they're not in the competencies that we have to teach to, things like technical and business competence. So in fact, Ebony might comment on that in a minute or two as to how that was different to the rest of it. And so those three things together, the coursework, which is the black letter, this is how you draft a contract thing, and then the work experience, go out and watch people doing that work, and then the CPE, so you get in the habit of doing that 10 hours a year for your practicing certificate renewal. So Ebony, I'll ask you, because you're one of the first that have gone through our most recently reconfigured continuing professional education. We used to give students choices. You can do some of this, some of that. Then we decided, well, let's just package it all together and put everybody through sort of a set routine. So how was your experience with that?
Good from memory. It was only a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, it was so there were 10 components, as Morten just said. They were all videos that were pre-recorded, and you needed to do that obviously to complete College of Law in its entirety. But some of the videos just focused on, as Morten said, like the legal and business skills in the profession, things to be aware of, updating, lost my train of thought, updating technology, and as it updates, things to be aware of in the profession. It sort of just made you aware of what to keep your eye out for when you enter the profession, and how things keep changing in this ever-changing environment with COVID and just coming out of lockdown and things like that. Great.
All right, thanks, Ebony. So before I move on to the last few slides, does anybody have any questions for Ebony sort of about, do you still have lingering questions about the coursework or the work experience, which I'm going to go into a little more detail about in the moment, and the continuing professional education, so the three components and the time frames? Are everybody pretty clear on that? Yeah, I can't really see all of you. I can't see if there are any virtual hands up. Doesn't look like it.
I think we're all pretty clear. Thank you, Morten.
Okay, good. All right. Well, look, I'm conscious of the time, so we'll just knock over these last couple of things. Hang on. Gone over work experience. Okay, so work experience. Look, there's an awful lot of detail here. I'm just going to give you the overview for present purposes. There are three options. So working from right to left, there's the traditional 75-day option. So that was sort of the gold standard, and that was always the way it was done for 40 or so years. You get it's a 15-week placement or a series of placements, and we done 5 days a week, 2 or 3 days a week, 1 day a week, 2 half days a week, lots of different ways to do it. That obviously is the ideal. That gives students the best experience. It gives the profession the confidence that students are coming in, grads are now coming into jobs having spent a significant time in practice, so they know all these things. But about coming out of the global financial crisis a decade or so ago, it was proving difficult there weren't many placements around. Students were having multiple jobs, couldn't take the time off to do the thing. So we introduced a shorter version, 15 days, 3 weeks, plus some additional work online to build on the actual 3 weeks in practice. So that's, we've still got that. About 10% of our students choose that. 90% still choose the 75-day option, and they have no problem getting the placements for that. So we had those two options for the last decade. And then of course the pandemic hit, and suddenly there were no placements out there. Everything slammed shut, and students were in a panic. Those that had placements lost them. Those that were about to get placements, of course, couldn't. So the regulators very quickly asked us to put together a no-day option, 0-day option, so that nobody would miss out, which we did by essentially just beefing up the 3-week option, turning it from a 6-week course to an 8-week course, put a little extra work in there. But critically, we organized mentoring sessions for the students that chose that option with practicing lawyers at three points throughout the course, that additional extra coursework, to review the work that they've done, have the opportunity to ask practicing lawyers questions about how these things come up in practice and the like. So look, our rules are on the website, lots of information about how many days you can do in a full-time course, part-time course, etc. And I'll answer any specific questions anybody has about that. But for now, all you need to know is there are 3 options. There's the 15-week option, the 3-week option, or for the moment, at least till the end of next year, we think the regulators will let us to continue doing the 0-day option, but no guarantee that will continue going forward. So that's the work experience bit of it. Then, okay, here, so we talked about the continuing professional education bit already. Look, last few slides, just to sort of put a human face to what we do. So look, I've got a lecturing staff here in New South Wales of over 30 foundation full-time lecturers. That's their job. It's all they do is look after our students every day, Monday to Friday, giving feedback, answering questions, sending out emails, announcements, introducing subjects, reviewing subjects, etc. So that's your primary resource. So here's just a snapshot of a few of my team. And then we've got another 75 or so adjunct lecturers, barristers, judges, people that teach the various workshops and help with the assessing, and also run courses from time to time. So they're all practicing lawyers. As I said, we don't have a PhD on our staff, and that's by design. You've had enough of the theory. The way I always like to summarize it is, like when you're flying, you're on a plane and you've got the pilot up the front. You try not to think about them too much because you just trust that they know what they're doing and they're going to keep the plane in the air and they're going to land safely. But if you did think about it, you'd think, okay, well, so this person flying the plane, they would have hopefully spent a lot of time in the classroom learning about the aerodynamics of flight, how to get a plane up, what keeps a plane up. So they'd know all about, acceleration and drag and lift and all the science and physics behind getting, a very big, heavy aircraft into the air. But at some point, their classroom teaching and learning would have been over, and it would have been time for them to actually fly for the very first time. And you'd hope that when they were going up to learn how to actually fly a plane, they had a pilot sitting next to them, not an avionics or aerodynamics professor. You want somebody that's actually flown a plane before and knows how to do it. So that's what we are. We're the flight instructors. We're the co-pilots. We're the ones that know how to do it and can sit next to you as you're learning the skills you need to. We're all right, now ease out on the throttle, pull back on the steering wheel, that level of instruction. It is literally just a little more of this, a little bit less of that, and this is how you navigate your way around that. So that's who our lecturing staff is, and that's their role more than anything. Now, but beyond the lecturing staff, we also have a very big building here with lots and lots of people in it, and you're supported in many, many other ways. So we've got our all of our students support team. We've got student services, customer engagement advisors. We've got well, there you go. There's a picture of your lecturer who's also a support. And then our career advisor, Ruth, is one of our career advisors that help you with all sorts of other questions. We've got a floor of our building with our IT staff. So student services, they're there. If you ring, somebody answers the phone. You send an email, somebody replies. Our IT team, if you're having some tech issues, we've got 20 people that'll jump on solving your problem for you. We've got another floor of our building that has all of our content design people. And their job is to continually review our materials, make sure they're current, they're relevant, they're interesting, they're accurate, and they're the best possible materials to help you learn the various skills that you're learning. So, look, I mentioned a lot of this before, the various options. So, look, the traditional course if you just do our, the regular course and get your work experience options sorted, you can see the current fees there. If for international students, we try and keep our fees for both domestic and international students as low as we can. As I said, we're not for profit, so that helps us in that regard. And then if you do it's the only thing you'd pay anything extra for would be the work experience options, if those suit you or you prefer them, or your circumstances just make it difficult to get a 15-week placement somewhere. You can see there's for the extra 6 weeks of coursework around the CEM. You can see the fees for next year going up to $1,610, and then $2,000 for the 0-day option, the in practice component that I mentioned before. And all those fees, unless you're paying the international fee, can go on to fee help. All right, so look, just a bit of a summary, all the various things we've talked about, the regular intakes, the customization, the flexibility, choices, options for the way you study. As Ebony mentioned before, self-paced, that's at the heart of our courses. As long as you're getting the stuff in when you need to, so that your lecturer can review it and give you the feedback that you need. You can do it whenever suits you, early morning, lunchtime, evenings, weekends, doesn't matter to us. You do the coursework when you have the time. Other than that first skills week that Ebony mentioned before, where you're here for the Monday to Friday. Beyond that, there is no set day or time that you need to attend for anything. You get 3 weeks notice or so ahead of the assessment period. So when the assessment periods are, they're in the timetable from the very first day of the course. So you can have conversations with your bosses and or other other places where you work months in advance to say, look, I'm going to need to take a day off somewhere in this period, or a couple hours at the very least to do my oral assessments. So you get plenty of notice that then you get 3 weeks, all the time slots come out. So you get in quick and you pick, most of the assessments take place over 2 or 3 days. So you can pick 8 o'clock on Tuesday or 1 o'clock on Wednesday, 5 o'clock on Friday, whatever suits you. And then, so you've picked the time that's going to happen. We haven't told you this day, this time you have to be there. Look, word of mouth, obviously that's the best thing we've got going for us. We've got 75,000 grads over the last 50 years have done our course, and they're all out there telling everybody what a good program it is. And like Ebony's here today to share her experiences. So ask around. You'll find out everything you need to know about our course, and you can see there local workshops, content, local practitioners. We teach in every capital city in the country, and we always make sure we've got local content, local teachers. We know there's no point in giving you a generic education. You need to know how it's done here in New South Wales. You need to know how to draft our contract for the sale of land. You need to know how to go into our magistrate's court to make a bail application or whatever it is you're going to be doing. So that's where our money goes, is to make sure that all the material is what you need it to be. So look, final bit there. I'm reliably informed that if you take a picture of this on your screen, it'll still work. You'll be the QR reader. You'll be able to download our guide. If for whatever reason it doesn't work for you, you can always just go onto our website and request a copy of the guide. I'll have a little bit more information than I've been able to cover in this time. And then just final slide. That's Kelly. I mentioned her at the beginning. You can contact her on those details, or you can ring that 300 number. So look, I'm out of slides and I've pretty much told you everything I think I can usefully cram into this short period. So look, I might just turn it over to Ebony one last time without notice to see if is there anything else that you think would be useful for them to know coming into college, and then just give everybody one last chance to ask you any of the questions that have arisen out of the most recent things we've been talking about.
Yeah, sure. One thing that I was thinking about when you were speaking is that college doesn't set you up for failure. Lecturers are there to not fail you, they're there to make you succeed. They want you to succeed. So when you go into an oral assessment, they're not there to put an F on your transcript. They want to allow you to pass. So it's quite different to uni in that sense. In the oral assessment, they'll give you everything that you need. So if you're stuck on a question, they'll give you more tips to try and help you answer that question, so you're not just left sitting there like a blank canvas. Yeah, I think that's sort of all the tips that I have for now. But as I said, yeah, it's very self-paced, quite enjoyable. I'd recommend doing it with friends. That way you're able to share your notes around, help each other with subjects. And if you have any questions, you can always ask friends in that particular course. Did anyone have any questions for me at this point?
I just had two questions. The first one was, I've heard of some people doing PLT during uni, like just before they finish, and I just wanted to know in what circumstances that would be advisable.
Sure. I had friends that actually started college before they'd even finished, as you just said, April. I wouldn't recommend doing that, only because that's just an extra thing that you have to worry about whilst trying to complete your studies at uni. But the only reason that one of my friends did it was because he really wanted to get admitted sort of as soon as possible. And the only way that he was able to do that was by starting college whilst he was still at uni. But yeah, I'm not sure in what circumstances. Morton, you might have a better understanding.
Yeah, look, that's one of the reasons why I don't specifically mention that is because look, I agree with Emily. It's not advisable, but it is possible. So the admitting authorities allow you, they would allow a student to start with our program. It's quite strict rules around it, and it's the admitting authority that makes this decision. So you have to actually apply to the admitting authority, apply to the LPAB. They charge you $100 to process the application, and they'll give you permission. It's what's called the early commencement rule. And so essentially what it says is, look, if you've got all your pre-SLEs out of the way, you've got no more than 2 electives left, and that's counting non-law subjects too. So it's not like 2 law subjects and an art subject or a commerce subject or something else. You can only have 2 subjects left. Then you can apply for permission to start with us. Now, as Ebony said, really the only circumstances I think it's advisable is where an employer says to somebody, look, we really want you to get admitted in December so you can start in January. And so to do that, you sort of double up. You do the last 2 uni subjects while you're doing college. But in my experience, and again, a lot of students can cope with it. It's doable. But I always come back to, well, but do you really need to put yourself under that much stress? And are you really doing, because most students are also, they've got a job on top of that. So they're doing college, uni, and 1 or more jobs. You might be working in the law, you might be working at a cafe or Target or whatever you are, you're working. And it's just an awful lot going on. Nobody wants you to get to the end of all that and get admitted exhausted and have put your mental health at risk. What I always say to students is, look, they keep telling us, whoever they are, this generation, you guys, you're gonna live to 100 plus. You're going to be working till you're 80. You're going to have 30 jobs across 10 different professions. What's the rush? Take an extra 15 weeks and just finish one thing and then move on to the next. The profession's still going to be there. The jobs are still going to be there. And wouldn't you rather arrive in a better mental state and having actually gotten the benefit of college without trying to do it on top of everything else? But look, having said that, it is an option that's available, and we have no say in it. We don't say yes or no. That's the admitting authority. But my experience is those students that do get permission to start early, they can struggle sometimes to keep up. It all just gets a little too hard. And it usually comes from the fact that they've underestimated how much time they were going to need to put into college. So they thought, oh yeah, I can do college on top of everything else going on in my life. And then they miscalculated.
Thanks for clarifying that. And the other question I had was about work experience and how we could go about finding it, or if we've already got a job in the legal industry, like at a firm or something, does that count towards the days?
Yep, great question. I probably should have covered a little more detail on that. I'll just use the 75-day option because, as I said, 90% of our students do that, and it helps the rules make a little more sense. You can count back, you can count up to 60 days back 2 years before you start with us. So many of our students, without even realizing it, they've already got 60 days that they've done because they had a job as a paralegal, or they did a clerkship somewhere, or volunteered somewhere at a CLC. So you can have 60 to 75 days done before you even start. And then you can do the remaining 15 days, almost 1 or 2 days a week over the time that you're doing the course with us. And so you get the 75 days done by the time you get to the end of the 15-week coursework, and then bang, you're just going straight into to admission. So that's the short answer to your question is you absolutely get as much as you can in those 2 years before you start, and pretty much any kind of traditional placement will count. The only requirements are you're in a legal setting doing work of a legal nature, and being supervised by a solicitor, a lawyer with a current practicing certificate. Now you can do it as a judge's associate, in a barrister's chambers, in-house counsel, in one of the even in the legal department in one of the accounting firms. There are a whole host of jobs out there that count more than people realize, and we deliberately keep our rules as vague as possible to try and make sure as many students can fit within them as we can get in, so that it'll facilitate the path to admission. So yes, so that's I suppose the message to anybody that's in third or fourth year, well, probably more fourth, penultimate year, is get out there. If you've already done some work, get it documented. If you haven't done it, go out and get as much of that in as you can, so that you've got those 60 days in the bank. Now I have to point out, we've got a little discretion at the moment under COVID to count more than 60 days, but that's a temporary COVID discretion because students, as we said, are finding some are trapped overseas, can't satisfy some of the requirements. But that's why you can count up to 60, because there is a requirement that at least 3 weeks, this is the regulator's requirement, at least 3 weeks has to be done while you're doing PLT or later. You can't do it all prior to starting with us. So even if you've done 1,000 days of work, you'll only be able to count 60 of them under normal times. At the moment, they're allowing us to count back for the full 75, but that could end at any time. That's the unusual and the exception to the rule. The normal rule is you have to do 3 weeks while you're doing PLT or later. So my usual advice to students is get the work before you start with us, document the work, get it all, fill out the paperwork and get it into us so it's ticked off. You got that email from us saying you've satisfied the requirement. And if you've got a job, if you've got a placement, hold on to it, even if you think you've done the 75 days, because by the time you get to us, they might go back to that. You need to do 15 days while you're doing your course or later. So don't give away a placement. Hold on to it, because you might need another 3 weeks worth of work towards the end. Does that answer the work experience question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Terrific. All right. Well, any other questions? Not seeing anything in the chat. Any hands up? No?
Hi, I am Winnie here. I would
Yes.
I would like to know about the first week. Although we register for the online course, we have to do the face-to-face course for the first week. What will happen in the first week?
Okay, good question. That first week, and as I said before, we offer it in the traditional face-to-face, physically here in our building, or in some of the other places that I mentioned, some of the regional areas, or it's entirely available virtually. It's the same week, skills week of workshops. It's just done on the Zoom platform instead of face-to-face. That's the only bit of our course we had to sort of quickly pivot to when the pandemic hit, because it was, even before the pandemic, it was just 1 week of face-to-face, and then the rest of it was online anyway, as I described before. So during that week, that skills week is designed to expose you to and give you the experience of the sorts of things that you can't learn by reading a book or watching a video or in an online environment. It's the skills that are best taught and experienced in a small workshop environment of 15 to 20 students with a skilled facilitator taking you through activities. So that's things like, there's almost a full day of interviewing where you learn, you get some experience interviewing each other. You get to play a role, play a solicitor interviewing a client. You get to play a client being interviewed. There are negotiations, so you're negotiating sort of front-end contracts in terms of a contract of employment, also negotiating to resolve a dispute. So there's a full day. It's a negotiation dispute resolution workshop where you negotiating to resolve conflicts, etc. There's 2 full days of advocacy. You can watch To Kill a Mockingbird as many times as you want. That's not going to teach you how to cross-examine someone. The only way to learn how to lead evidence or cross-examine is to pretty much have a witness, have a judge, have an opponent taking objections, and you're leading a client through their evidence or cross-examining a witness for the other side. Things like that. There are some other skills workshops. There's writing and drafting. We go through the mechanics of drafting different types of documents, problem solving, risk management, well-being in practice. So it's a full week of workshops, both short and long. Short is a couple of hours, and as long as 2 full days for advocacy, where you get the experience of doing those sorts of things, mentioning a matter at court that might be in for directions hearing, setting something down for hearing, or putting in place a timetable, exchange of evidence, or deciding whether a matter is suitable for arbitration, those sorts of things, right through preparing a matter for hearing, leading evidence out of witnesses, interlocutory applications, notice of motion for the provision of particulars, or setting aside a default judgment, all of those sorts of fun things that are best and really only taught in a group environment. And so when it's face to face, you're in a room with, as I said, about 18, 20 students, and a range of facilitators come through during the week. We try wherever possible to get barristers to come in to teach advocacy, mediators to come in and teach the negotiation workshop, trained mental health, first aid, and well-being practitioners to come in and do that workshop. And our course lecturers, of course, are experienced in all these areas as well. And when it's online, you're just in an online group of about that size. And you go out into little breakout rooms, and you do some things on your own, you do some things in groups, of 2 or 3, and then other things you do as a whole group when you debrief an activity and that sort of thing. So in fact, I might, one last question for Ebony before we call it a day, because you most recently went through that and you did it online, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we weren't doing face-to-face courses back at the beginning of the year. So can you give a little more detail about what that week was like from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. So Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, with an hour lunch break in between. Each day there was a different lecturer who went through courses. As Morton said, there were 2 full days for advocacy. As it was online, we got split into breakout rooms to go through activities, interview each other for certain tasks, and do activities together, which was good because then for subjects where it required teamwork, you already knew people in that class, so you could reach out to them and see if they wanted to be in your group together, which was quite useful, sort of like what would happen face to face. But yeah, that week was sort of all of the foundational work before moving into the subjects for the part-time course.
Cool, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Does that answer your question, Winnie?
Yeah, sure, thank you. And I am based in Darwin, Northern Territory. So hopefully I will have the Zoom face-to-face thing, right? Virtual one.
Yes, we run 2 courses up at Charles Darwin University. We had one that just started back in July, and our next one I think is because you guys, the university up there keeps changing their assessment period. So I think we're moving to the 2nd week of December for our next course.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so have a look at the website. The dates should be up, off the top of my head, I think it's the 2nd, might even be the 3rd week of December now. They keep pushing it further and further back. We used to do it at the end of November, but they've changed their semester structure up there, so we keep having to move to accommodate when the students are finishing up there and when rooms are available.
Okay, thank you.
All right, were there any other questions? Sorry, we've gone a little bit long. Apologies for that. Well, if there are no other questions, we might just leave it there. So look, thank you all for coming, and thank you for anybody watching this later. Hope it's given you plenty of information and answered your questions. If there's anything you have questions that we haven't answered in the session, feel free to contact our student services people. You can see that number still on the screen. I'll stop sharing now so I can actually see everybody. There we are. Some bigger smiling faces. So look, Ebony, a big thank you for coming along and so generously giving up an hour of your lunchtime for us. Greatly appreciated. But I think I speak for everybody when I say how useful it is to have a recently finished student who's done our course to come and provide some information that I'm just unable to provide. So look, I think it was very useful, and we're grateful that you've come along and participated. And Paige, as always, thank you for putting the event together for us. Look forward to seeing you in person again next time we come out and do a face-to-face session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Morden and Ebony and Kelly as well, for organising on behalf of the NDSLS. Thanks for giving up your time to give that presentation. It was very informative and very helpful.
Oh, good. Glad it's one of the best bits of my job. Always happy to talk to students.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we might leave it there then. All right. Thank you very much.
Bye.